Right then, this is In the Hunt, and for you fans of the Metal Slug sections where you got to control a submarine, well, this is a treat for you, because this is effectively an entire game based around one of those sections, although this game did actually come out first, but hey, you know. Anyway, this is actually a very fun game. It's a horizontal scrolling shooter, as you can no doubt probably tell by looking at the footage, but there's some noticeable differences that you may not pick up. For example, this game is not auto-scrolling. You decide when to move forward, and that's a unique feature since, well, most shoot-em-ups drag you forward kicking and screaming whether you like it or not. Also, another thing about this game, you're in a submarine. There's not very many submarine shmups out there. I mean, there's Sega's Depth Charge, which was alright, and there was Nintendo's Radar Scope, which was a poor sort of Space Invaders clone. I imagine there are a few others too, but this one is the definitive submarine shmup. And because you're in a submarine, you can be attacked by enemies from the air and from the ground. At the moment I'm trying to do battle with a giant ship and losing badly. Pro tip, don't bother trying to fight that ship. Anyway, because this was actually done by the guys who did Metal Slug, the graphics are gorgeous, so's the sound actually. Everything's super detailed, everything has a ton of animation. The action on screen is really crazy, there's lots of stuff to dodge, lots of stuff to shoot. The gameplay, this is a brutal game. Like, I have trouble getting past the first level in this game. I'm not gonna lie, I've not played this game in years, and when I checked it out again to do this review, I remember two things: A, that I fucking love this game, and B, dear god is this game hard. Like most shoot-em-ups, there's also power-ups to collect. You can use them to power up your torpedoes or your missiles and your depth charges. Each of these react very differently, and it's a very strange game, this. Like, you wouldn't think a game like this would actually work, but it does, and I love the game for that. This is a very well designed, very tough game, and I'm gonna have to give it 9 out of 10. I really like this game. You could admit the argument this is probably the best game in the collection. I think personally, in my opinion, that would be Gunforce 2, but if you were to stand there and say, hey, I think this game's better than Gunforce, I wouldn't be able to argue with you, because this is a fantastic game and it's well worth checking out, so make sure that you do. As you can no doubt probably tell by this iconic title screen, this is Kung Fu Master, probably one of Irem's most famous games, and what set them off on the path to starhood. But yeah, this game is the reason why you're not getting the Japanese version of games on this collection, because the Japanese version of this game was actually a Jackie Chan product. In fact, it was licensed after one of his old films, a film called Spartan X, as it happens. Hence the reason why the main villain signs the letter with an X. Useless bit of trivia for you there, but hey, there's not really that much I can say about this game. I mean, it's Kung Fu Master. If you've played any kind of video game over the past like 20 years, chances are you've probably stumbled across this game in some form or another. That's not to say that this is a bad thing. This game is considered to be a classic, and yeah, I'm likely to agree, even though I'm pretty shit at it. But for those who haven't had the privilege of actually playing this game, effectively you walk from one side of the room to the other, punching and kicking multiple dudes along the way, and eventually you come up to a boss and you beat the crap out of him. That's it. The main thing with this game is though, he can't move while punching or kicking, so you're rather stationary when you're attacking, and you really got to be careful when you attack or when you approach a boss like that guy, because you'll throw a knife in your face if you get too close. Just skip ahead a little bit so you can see this boss completely kicking my ass. Yeah, the bosses do take a bit of strategy to defeat, Unfortunately, I've not played this game in years, so I don't know what that strategy is, but hey. Yeah, the graphics and sound still hold up to these days. Yeah, they're pretty simple, but the characters animate well, the game plays relatively well, even by today's standards, although it may be a bit simplistic for a lot of people's taste these days. I find it being a little simplistic for mine, but that's not to say this is a bad game. I still consider this to be a good game, but yeah, the graphics and sound are nice, the controls, yeah, they're nice. This is a nice game, what can I say? You can't really have a collection of Irem games without Kung Fu Master, as it's pretty iconic, especially for Irem's back catalogue, which most people probably couldn't even point out. So yeah, if I was going to give this game a score, which I will, I'll give this game 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 in my opinion means good. Like, 5 is average, 7 is good in my opinion, and while this game is a classic, like, I don't know, like, I just don't enjoy it as much as I used to anymore. But that shouldn't stop you from giving this game a try, because it is still pretty awesome. Right then, this is Ledger of Hirotoma. There's not really much I can say about this game other than it's a fairly standard platforming game where you control a kind of weird boy who can cast magic and shoot a whole bunch of dudes. The actual gameplay itself is actually pretty nice, and there's some power-ups that you can run around and collect, and the enemies are generally pretty interesting and keep you on your toes. The level design's also pretty good, but relies heavily on collecting keys for some reason, like a lot of platform games did back in the day, I guess. One thing that did strike me as pretty odd about this game is, like, the power-ups kind of feel like a shoot 'em up. I think it's some of Irem's shoot 'em up heritage coming through there, I think. Another thing that I've noticed, that this game is really heavily animated. That is a trait for Irem games. They do like their animations when it comes to games. Also, the music's fantastic. I like it a lot. I just skipped ahead a little bit because I really wanted to show you guys the boss. Overall, I'd say this game has some very nice graphic and sound. The gameplay is good. The levels aren't cheap in any way, and it's got some pretty interesting level design and enemy design. So I'd give this game about 7 out of 10. I mean, this game isn't any great shakes in terms of actual platforming games, but it is certainly a very solid platform game and is definitely worth checking out. Especially when it comes to big things like this. This is the boss of the first level and he completely kicks my ass. So yeah, that's Ledger of Hirotoma. Go check it out. Mystic Riders. This is one of Irem's lesser known titles in my opinion. It's very hard to get any kind of information about this game, which is a shame because this game isn't half bad. This is a horizontal shoot 'em up, which, let's face it, was Irem's wheelhouse, like the R-Type series, Cosmic Cop, that kind of thing. But the main difference between those and this one is, well, this is kind of cute and has cute graphics, and that's a bit of a departure for them. Like, obviously they did games like Legend of Tomba or whatever, but they did tend to favour that post-apocalyptic kind of gritty aesthetic to their games, and this was definitely something very different from that. This is a very bright, very colourful game. There's a lot of great animation, a lot of great sprites in it. The levels are very well designed. There is some interesting gameplay mechanics at play, like you can charge up your shot a la R-Type, or if you press the second button, you can fling your broom about the place, just like your force option in R-Type. But this one's a bit different because it will always come back to you. And how you throw it out is basically, say you want to throw it up, you press down and button 2 and it will throw it up. I'm not sure why they do that, but this does mean that enemies can't cheap shot you from behind, so easily, which, you know, I like, because there's nothing more annoying than having enemies randomly come up behind you and you not being able to do anything about it. I think another reason why I like this game so much is because it reminds me so much of Free Wonders from Capcom, which was an old arcade game which had 3 arcade games in it. One was called Rooster, one was called Chariot, one was called Don't Pull. Now this game, Mystic Riders, has a very similar aesthetics to Chariot and Rooster. So if you've never played Free Wonders, I strongly suggest checking it out because it is a fantastic set of games. I actually own it on the set and I like it that much. Here is the typical giant Irem boss right here, and he just completely destroys me. He's laughing in my face as we speak. But yeah, if I was going to score this game, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. I really come to like this game. It has some very nice colourful graphics. The enemies are kind of interesting, the bosses are fun. Like, you rarely see a boss like this in a shoot 'em up these days. Yeah, I strongly suggest checking this one out. This is a very fun game. I happen to like it a lot. Good job, Irem. This is Ninja Spirit, and I have to admit, I've not had very much experience with this game, even though there are a lot of fans of this game. It's kind of weird, I've never really had the time to play it until I actually picked up this collection, so if I'm not as knowledgeable on this game as I am with the others, I apologise for that. Anyway, what is Ninja Spirit? Well, I'd like to say it's really just Kung Fu Master but with ninjas, and instead of punching and kicking dudes, you're using weapons like swords, shurikens, explosives and grappling hooks to take out your enemies. One thing that this game does have going for it though is absolutely goddamn crazy. Seriously, there are enemies crawling all out of the woodwork everywhere at all times. It's absolutely bananas. At some points it pretty much turns into a bullet hell shoot 'em up. It gets that hectic and crazy. You can also make some ridiculous jumps too. I didn't realise this before, but if you actually hold down the jump button, your guy basically jumps incredibly high into the air, like through the entire way of the screen, and it can be pretty awkward at first, but once you get used to it, the game becomes incredibly fun. Like I said, with most games, especially Irem games of this era, because this game is brutal. I mean, I'm not even kidding. But that's Irem's reputation, they make hard arcade games. Although my tip for you guys is, if you are going to check this game out, and I'd strongly suggest that you do, what you want is the shurikens, basically. It's the spread gun of this game. Like, you want shurikens and you want to get the shadow ninja guy as quickly as possible, because you just end up wasting dudes. And this is what I was talking about when I was saying bullet hell. Look at all these ninjas just jumping up in the air and just spamming shurikens everywhere. Absolute craziness. Anyway, the actual presentation of this game is very well done, especially for the time that the game was made. The graphics are nice, it's well animated, the enemies are nice and colourful, they're well animated, well designed, the levels a bit plain looking, but they do the job. You get the impression that you are in a broken down temple or whatever. The music is also appropriate and actually kind of catchy. Overall, I happen to like this game a lot. Actually, before I forget, there's something else I really like about this game, and that's the upgrade system. Like, you can collect little power orbs that upgrade your weapons individually. I always go with the shurikens first, as I mentioned before, because it's kind of like the spread gun once you upgrade it. Very, very useful for clearing out waves and waves of shuriken throwing ninjas and guys that look like Raiden from Mortal Kombat, but hey. So Ninja Spirit overall was a big surprise to me. And like I said before, I wasn't particularly familiar with it before, but now that I've played it a bit, I freaking love this game. absolutely terrible at it, but I love this game. Overall, I'd give this game about 8 out of 10. I really happen to like it. I think you will too if you give this game a chance. So go check it out. Right then, this is R-Type Leo, and if you've never heard of this game, I don't blame you, because this is considered to be one of the black sheeps of the R-Type series, as this game actually takes place before R-Type 1, and also the gameplay is, well, while it's still a horizontal shoot 'em up, the actual gameplay mechanics like the force and the wave beam aren't in this game, because those things are developed later on in the series timeline. So while this game may not be completely identical to the other R-Types, it doesn't necessarily mean that this game's a bad game. In fact, because this game mixes things up a bit, I actually like it a lot. I consider it to be one of the best games in this collection, as a matter of fact. One thing that you may have noticed, that this game's really detailed. Look at the background, look at the enemies, look at the foreground with that broken bit of ship there. There's a lot of detail in this game. And I consider this game to be a lot more colourful than your standard R-Type. In fact, I'd say this is kind of more Gradius-y in terms of level design. That sounds really weird, but you know what I mean. You go back to playing R-Type 1 and 2, and then look at how colourful this game is. It's fantastic. I'm not saying that R-Type's general art direction's bad. In fact, I love it, but this is a welcome change. I do like this a lot. Although if I have to admit, if they did this for every single game after this game, I would probably be a bit annoyed, because I do like my R-Type. Anyway, like most R-Type games, this is mainly based on memorization. Pure reflexes alone are not going to save you on this. You need to have the right weapon for the right situation at the right time. The levels, as you would expect from Irem, are very well designed, very varied, highly enjoyable. There's some cheap sections in this game, like enemies sneaking up from behind you, but if you have the right kind of weapon, you can actually shoot backwards anyway. Like the red beam weapon actually allows you to fire backwards if you move forward with your ship, like I just demonstrated there. In fact, I'm going to need to use it to kill this guy here, and it's pretty useful. My favourite weapon though is the bouncing blue lasers though. Literally, it's this spamming death. Bouncy laser beam death. One thing I will say about this game though, the bosses aren't as iconic. I think this is probably the reason why not many people remember this game so fondly. With that said though, like I said before, this is a highly overlooked game in the R-Type franchise, and I strongly urge you check it out. I would give this game 9 out of 10 because it's a fantastic game, and probably one of the main reasons why you're actually picking up this collection, if I be honest with you. Are you ready for this? Really? This is Superior Soldiers. I'm going to straight up say this game's getting a 3 out of 10 from me because it's freaking terrible. Yeah, this is a beat 'em up by Irem, not renowned for their fighting games, may I add. What we have here is 7 of the most generic and terrible characters ever made in some fighting game. Okay, that may be a bit much, but whoa, what the fuck? That thing looks grotesque. Ew, is that supposed to be like fucking alluring or something? Because that's gross. Anyway, I picked Meltdown because why not? I mean, why wouldn't you pick a guy called Meltdown with a massive nuclear symbol on his head when you're playing a fighting game? This game was made back in 1993, back when there was a big thing over Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. This was definitely in that heyday. Games like Fighters Histories and stuff were remembered as fondly as pretty decent Street Fighter knockoffs. Superior Soldiers, on the other hand, is remembered by nobody because it's imminently forgettable in pretty much every aspect. And this is crazy because the people who worked on this were the people who made Metal Slug, and also some of the graphic designers who made this game and drew these terrible ass characters. They actually did some of the designs for King of the Fighters. That's right. And even though this game does play pretty fucking poorly, it does actually have some innovation in there. For example, you can get up quickly after being knocked down by hitting the button. I believe this was actually one of the first games to do that. This was also one of the first games to actually have running in it. I don't think any other fighting game before this one allowed you to double tap the direction of the joystick quickly to go into a sprint, and it's actually one of my favourite tactics in this game actually. The main problem with this game though isn't like the characters or the graphics or the sound, it's the gameplay. It's actually pretty terrible, even though it is kind of inspiring in some ways. The moves and doing combos in this game just don't flow. The reason why Street Fighter 2 was so popular because it was such a well-made game that they accidentally invented the combo system, where you could actually chain together moves and do really damaging combos on your opponent. You can really do that in this game. The moves are horrible, the combat is stiff, and trying to pull off any special moves is lucky, in my opinion. Like, I actually have a pretty good fighting stick, and I also have an Xbox controller, a PS2 controller and keys, and no matter what thing I tried to use on it, I couldn't do the moves properly. And I've been playing fighting games for like 2 decades pretty much. So yeah, that's Superior Soldiers. I apologise for not going super in depth in this because I could literally probably rant about this game for a good 15 minutes, but this is definitely the turkey of the bunch. This is probably the worst game in the collection and is completely forgettable. I've played some pretty bad fucking fighting games in my time, and you know, you can say what you like about games like Street Fighter the movie, the game, or like Tattoo Assassins. These things are enjoyable in their own little way, but this game's just bland, boring, and completely forgettable. Don't bother with it. People who know me and are familiar with my work will know that I absolutely adore this game. This is Undercover Cops and would probably get a 10 if this was not the world version. The world version has some minor changes, like they took out a move and replaced some of the weapons. Nothing too major, but still, this game still gets a solid 9 out of 10 for me, and you're about to see why. This game is essentially a standard scrolling beat 'em up, but with crazy lush Irem graphics and some imaginative and quite anime inspired enemies and level design. Undercover Cops is really crazy actually. It's got a lot of unique and surprising twists and turns. For example, you wouldn't think he'd be able to pick up a huge beam like that, but apparently he can, and not only can he do that, it's an very effective weapon which doesn't hinder his movement at all. Something I really do like about this game is the enemy variety is pretty varied, and they do tend to throw quite a lot of dudes at you at screen at any one time. This can be pretty bad if you're not ready for it. Like, trust me when I say this game's much easier with 2 people, but most people these days don't like playing these games, so chances are you're probably going to be playing this by yourself if you do end up playing this. And I'd strongly suggest checking this game out, because a lot of people, when they go, oh, what are your favourite scrolling beat 'em ups, they think, oh, Final Fight, or most people say Streets of Rage 2 is probably the best one. I disagree. I'd say this one's probably my favourite. This or Guardian Heroes, but that's on the Saturn, and that's a review for another time, I think. I've skipped ahead a little because, well, there isn't really much to say about this game. It's just a really excellent scrolling beat 'em up, but there is one thing I want to show you, and that's this boss fight. This was the fight that totally sold me on this game and inspired me to put as many 20p pieces as I possibly could to beat this game, back when I first discovered it in a Weymouth Seaside arcade. You see that he basically turns into this hulking, like, Terminator-esque thing, and there's a lift. You'll notice that next to the lift there's a thing saying danger, and the reason for this is, well, you can get squashed by a lift, or if you're really clever, you can end up doing what most people like to do when they actually play this game, and that's knocking the boss into the lift himself, creating one of the most iconic things in scrolling beat 'em up history. So yeah, check this game out. It's fantastic and I highly recommend it. It's one of my favourite scrolling beat 'em ups. Right then, this is Vigilante and it's the final game on this collection, and I've got a bit of a confession to make. Even though I do like Irem's Kung Fu Master, I don't like this game all that much. This game is supposed to be like the spiritual sequel, even a direct sequel to Kung Fu Master, but I could never get along with this game. Mainly because like, there are too many mid-bosses and crap in this game, and I don't know, like, you end up punching one dude and then a bunch of other dudes just sneak up behind you and grab you and you end up losing half of your health. And yeah, I know, I suck, but still. Every other Irem game, I feel that it's my fault that I fail at it. But with this game, I just think it's a bit cheap is all. That's all I'm saying. I really don't like this game at all. That's not to say that I think this game's an incredibly bad game. In fact, I know this is probably like a classic that loads of people really like, and I kind of don't. But at the end of the day, this game is basically Irem's Kung Fu Master, but with added cheapness and with some better graphics and nunchucks. But yeah, effectively you just go walk around in a straight line punching and kicking dudes. And well, that's pretty much it. Unlike games like Undercover Cop, this game really didn't push any boundaries. Like, it did nothing for its genre really. There's the reason why you didn't see like Vigilante 2 or whatever. It got ported about all over the goddamn place, but overall I was disappointed with this game when I first played it, and even today, I don't think it's still that very good of a game. If I was going to score this game, which I suppose I best do now, I'd give this game about 5 out of 10. And if you are a fan of Vigilante, I understand. But at the end of the day, this game basically just isn't for me. And that's the entire collection, ladies and gentlemen. If I was going to give this collection an overall score, I'd give it 8 out of 10. Kind of annoying that some of the Japanese versions aren't in this version and we can't select between them, but at the end of the day, if you're that bothered, you can just take the ROMs and dump them in MAME and they still work. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and I'll see you guys around. Bye!